it's weird seeing yourself and hearing yourself, right? And being like, oh, that's what they look like. From our perspective, it sounds like we're incredible, right? But being able to record yourself and put yourself out there is something people don't like to do. And the people that do, they have an edge.
The Move Entrepreneur Evolved podcast. Get on it.
And here we are back on the Moved Entrepreneur Evolved podcast. Super excited today. Our guest is Lewis Vandervalk. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Excited to be here, my friend.
Excited to have you here, man. It's good times. All the way from Canada.
All the way from the East Coast.
Blue Crocus Solutions, web development, SEO, and obviously serving clients out there to create success, right? Absolutely. But I always do my best to throw a loop for you. In the very beginning of the podcast, I'm going to take you all the way back to 2017-ish. I'm not going to take you all the way back to my stocking time when I saw you put your computer on your bunk bed so you could work. I won't take you all the way back there, but I did my stocking. But one thing I saw that kind of going back here is that it looks like you had kind of an engineer background. Am I right? Or an engineer brain?
You're right, man. You're right. Yeah. Basically, I mean, I think we're just going here, so I can kind of bring you up to speed on how I got to that picture there. I think I know. Was it the computer on the bed there in my
there was that one. And I think that what I'm expressing is on your entrepreneurial journey. I think that anybody that's on here that's talking about being a digital entrepreneur, many times if we had a bunk bed, that would be your standing desk.
Yeah. That's funny, actually. That story, I moved in with my cousin. We lived in a mobile home for my first year of university, and he had this big master bedroom and the kitchen and everything. I had this little like 10 by 10 room. So I was like, how's this going to work? So I was like, well, I have space over my bed that I don't use, so I'll just prop my bed up, put my laundry and all of that underneath and make a closet under there. And then I'd make it a standing desk. And it was great because I'm 6'8". So it sitting for long periods of time is no fun. You just folding into it.
At 6'8", that bunk bed sat about 4 feet under you. So for most of us, we would have been typing like this.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back. Obviously, it was obviously a computer. What were you working on at that time? What were you doing?
I would have been working on, it would have been first year university, mechanical engineering. So I started university as a mature student. So I right out of high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't want to continue on in the family business, the greenhouse and farming industry. Felt like there was more stuff going on and I wanted to be involved with that. My cousin was like, hey, you should come to university. I was first in my family to go to university. He's like, hey, you should do mechanical engineering. Because I really had no idea. I hadn't really talked to people all that much about the process. And so picked mechanical engineering because he was like, this is what you're interested in, machines and all of that. Went through, and so that was my first year getting going and went through, got a degree in mechanical engineering. Did
just kind of to stop you. Isn't it interesting during that time, the way that you would just pose that, right? When people come into our lives, sometimes they're the pivot and where we go. And what you just explained there was like, I just was kind of chilling out. I didn't really want to work for the family. And then my buddy said what I was.
Yeah. No, it's crazy.
This is how I see you.
Yeah.
And then you basically looked at that as an opportunity to say, maybe he sees something that could connect with me. I think that's a really cool pivoting moment for you. For that. I think that's really cool. So you moved, you decided to do engineering. And I think that the reason that I'm having this conversation and bringing this up is because I think that our brains, engineer brains, are different than different brains, and the way we function and the way we look at things many times are who we need to have around us. Meaning like, hey, sometimes I need that brain, sometimes I need this brain. Being an engineer, how have you looked at presenting yourself? And I say that in the most respectful way, but we all know engineers they'd rather just be inside of a dark room and let me solve this son of a bitch and I'll come back with the answer.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to mess up, but I don't want to mess up in front of you. So just leave me alone and then I'll come back. And that brain is fascinating. My question is, in that brain, what kind of how do you see yourself in business with that brain compared to like a charismatic personality? My personality may have more charismatic side, so I have to work on engineer stuff. How have you found that for yourself?
So it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm going to throw your storyline there for a loop a little bit, because I'm in this business now, and so I kind of made a transition there. But I found I wasn't the stereotypical engineer. I didn't love that. Like I enjoyed moments of diving deep into a problem and getting, I loved the hands-on building and stuff. I worked in design using my skills, mechanical design, but I didn't love. I just couldn't see myself doing that long term. My favorite moments were, interacting with people on the projects, talking about the high level stuff, and it kind of came and grew on me that I'm very much a visionary. I can see projects as a whole. I can, you and I can chat here and we can plan out, this strategy for going into a new market, for example, or a new project. And I can sit down and it's just like flooded with all these ideas, but I need someone to implement it. So I never was good at that. Okay, let's go lock ourselves in the room and actually implement. I was like, all right, where's the next project? Where's the next project I can start? Yeah.
So you got really good at chunking and bulking things. And then you said, look, I got to get somebody else to execute this. What do you think that is about people, just in general? What do you think that whole thing is like? I need to just offload this and not try to force ourselves to learn it. I think we learn that as entrepreneurs, right? Or business owners. We just like shit.
It's a work in progress for sure for me, because I'm still wired to get in there and do it myself. Like I grew up, on the farm. You got to get in and fix it. You can't necessarily call someone to fix it. So I'm still wired like that, and I'm unwiring myself because I operate better and more in my zone of genius if I can say, okay, this is the broad picture. I'll start the picture. I'll lay the foundation strokes, and I'll tell you where the mountains go and where the beach is going to go and the sun's going to be over here. And then I need someone to finish things up. But I think, it's a learned process, man. It's a learned process. Some people are much more wired with the integrator implementer stuff, and we need those people to make the world go around. But I love starting stuff, and I love, kind of casting that larger vision.
This isn't business, but it's cool to talk about. It was going back in your story as well, is that you kind of got addicted to these robotics, it looks like.
I did. Yeah. It was fun. There were some school projects. So I did mechanical engineering with a minor in mechatronics is what it was called at my school. And it's basically,
I ain't gonna lie to you. I have no clue what a mechatronics is, but yeah,
it's robots. It's okay. The mechanical movement powered by electricity, the motors and the activators and whatnot to make them move. And it was a fun foray into that world, because I really didn't know a lot about it.
It's really interesting that you say that. And because most of this, your business grows when systems stabilize, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think some values that you have utilizing the type of brain that you've worked yourself out of, I guess, that kind of said, look, you got to tap both. I guess it would be when you say like, your flow of genius, I think that people oftentimes forget that you can be good at other things. You don't just have to be good at something. And so you kind of getting to a point where I have engineering, and you're like, well, wait a minute, how can I figure out those other things and add them at like maybe a B level, so I can move through, especially as a lot of solo entrepreneurship too. We got to move a lot of stuff, right?
A lot of levers. Yeah.
So let's go into a little bit. You had taken, and I wanted to kind of lay the foundation of I'm definitely not trying to tag you, my friend, not by any means.
No, I'm an open book.
Very cool. So, but on the other note, when we have traits, I think it's interesting. So you then got to a point where you said, I have a school background. I said, I'm going to become not educate. I'm going to take a risk, really. And as you take a risk, what was your first risk in business? What did you do? What was your first shot at this game?
The first risk, it was really, after school, I graduated. And like I said, I'd been working a job all through school to support myself. My wife and I got married, supported that. And then after school, our first son, our only son, our son was born. And I was going to work before he was awake and coming back, and I'd see him for an hour, and then it was all over, right? He'd be back to sleeping and growing. And so I started looking at different ways to, is there anything I can do outside of this? I'd seen a friend of mine doing drop shipping, during university, and he was doing very well at that. So I looked at that. Didn't vibe with me quite, with where I was in life. So I kind of kept looking around, started seeing some ads, and ended up dropping like 10 grand on a course. So that was kind of the first risk. It was, my wife and I had some money saved up for a bathroom. And so I'd say that's my first sale in business was selling my wife on the fact that, hey, this could be something really cool. Let's go for it. We have the money. It was
like
it
this,
was
right? Let me see if I got it right. Look, I know you want a bathroom, but if we spend this money, you might be able to have 2 bathrooms
or 3 or 4, right?
3 or 4. So,
I
mean, at the pivotal point, this
shorter.
is an interesting thing that you said that, because the pivotal point is you ask somebody to help you stand up. Right. Yeah. And I think that this is interesting because even in my own personal life, I looked at anything that I've ever done, no matter how much I want to be arrogant, because eventually you start getting some knowledge. You're like, I can do that. That having someone to have your back really makes a damn difference, doesn't it?
Huge. I've spent a lot on courses and had to unlearn a lot of stuff and learn a lot of stuff. I mean, the business, if you're going to do it properly, you got to reshape your mind from a lot of what comes before and what you've been taught and what you grew up with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think you're absolutely right. And then your poison, I guess you would say, it was going after web dev and SEO and creating a back-end structure for that. Does that sound right?
Yeah, exactly. So catering to contractors, web development, SEO, lead generation through Google. We do Google ads now, and basically everything Google related. Just blow up the brand and dominate the competition in the area.
That's cool. And then as you went through that, when you started, I think that this is interesting to talk about. You spend 10 grand. What was the next day like for you?
It was 10 grand less in the bank account. It was like, it was let's go. I was excited. I'm a risk taker by nature. One of my mentors here locally, he worded it well. You pull the trigger and ride the bullet, right? So
pull the trigger and what?
And ride the bullet.
Ride the bullet. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of my nature, for better or for worse. Sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't, but I'm very much, okay, I latch onto an idea. If I don't move today, I'm never going to move. So let's go. Okay.
So I think that right there, I mean, you added 2 different pieces. You said, look, I got someone to kind of push me through. And then you said, like, this is how I'm going to do it. And then the other one, and I know Tony Robbins is probably the guy that just keeps saying, like, you got to take massive action.
Yeah.
When you did that, let's talk about the first month. What was that like? I think that these times are interesting because there's a lot of things goes on in your head because no one has a magic pill. You still have to become that business. And I think this is something that people don't realize. I ask myself all the time the same thing. It's like, am I becoming what I'm trying to do? Am I like personally aligned with that? Yeah. And I think that, what was your thoughts on like now let's go like 30 days out. What was your success or what was your, oh, honey, we might have to have half a bathroom. Where were you with that?
Yeah, the reality check of the bathroom number didn't come until a few months later, but it was so I was still working my full-time job. Okay. Doing mechanical design. So it was just devouring all the content I could, getting involved in the people that I was now surrounded with that were part of the program, right? And so it was a huge mindset shift for me to see people making money that was astronomical to me at the time. I was making like $4,500 a month. Right. And so 10 grand was a big investment, and then going from there, I knew there was potential, but then to actually say, okay, I can make 10 grand a month. I get 20. What? Like, that's crazy. Right. So getting involved in that, I knew nothing about business and marketing. I had dabbled in doing some reselling on Facebook. I loved flipping stuff. I would buy, like, at one point when I was younger, I bought like 300 RFID covers for your Visa cards. I don't know if you've seen those around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I bought them for like
the ones, what are they?
RFID, like blocking cards. So they've got a little film on the inside so that people can't come up with a card reader and like steal your info from your wallet kind of thing as you're like walking down the street.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, all right, let's go. So I bought like 300 or 500. I can't remember. And I think they were like 10 cents a piece. And I sold them for $3 a piece to my friends and family and members of the church and everything. And I was like, sweet, I just made a massive profit here.
Yeah.
So I'd always had that bit of a drive. My dad and I tried to start a wood turning business, making bowls out of wood, selling them to touristry stuff, and with farm work and everything, it's pretty hard to balance all of that. But I'd always had that receptiveness to the concept. But then the first 30 days was all right. Every chance I could get, listening to different podcasts, asking people, how do I just become a sponge and like kind of line myself up with where all this is going, right? Because some of the concepts were so foreign to me. So it was Gary Vee for a while. He'll get you fired up if you're ever feeling down. How I built this podcast was one that I loved, listening to the struggles and the pain and the suffering that entrepreneurs went through. And then, you see them where they are today. So it was, the 30 days was, all right, let's get in, let's learn what we can do. And then it was, sending out a lot of emails, getting in touch with people here locally, going out for my first sales meeting with a product that I didn't really know what I was doing. Right.
How'd you feel about that? What was your, I know I don't mean to bring this up, but I'll be honest with you. I think that those little engineer, like electrical things that you made, those like little robot things.
Yeah.
They're so simple, like you could probably sit down and figure them all out, but they just look like they have so much going on, that they're so complex, right? So when I kind of having this conversation, I can't keep going back to that, because I know that in that you are really changing. Like, I think that's what I'm trying to get out. It's like, there's a lot of shifts in who we are. And I think that you're a great expression of that. And I think that's why I'm bringing it up. So I want you to know that. And on the other side, it's like, when you went to go do sales, that's a totally different side. So what was your thought about that?
I was pretty comfortable with talking to people. Like I said before, like I loved having relationships with people and talking. And that was my favorite part of what I did with engineering design. But the concept of, like, I didn't really know, I'd never done what I was about to sell. I knew that it could be done because I saw it. Yeah. But selling something that I'd never done, that was a big shift for me. And kind of, as entrepreneurs now, if we know there's a solution, we can say, yes, we'll figure it out. But that was probably one of the biggest early on shifts for me was, okay, I don't necessarily have to know how to do it. I need to know that it can be done. And I need to know that there's someone in my corner to help me figure it out. And then boom, I can go out and say, hey, this is the problem you're having. Let's figure it out. Right.
I think you made a good point right there. Proven formula, and go and execute. And I think that goes along with everything. I think that maybe we mutter that up a little bit, but I mean, that's a doctor, right? There comes a time where you have to grab the instrument and just go, right? It's like, even though it's a heart, there's another surgeon's like, okay, you're on your own now. And you're like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe your first solo flying, there's like that moment, you're like, oh, I really do have to pass this. I have
your life in your hands, literally, right?
Literally, you have to walk and take like that next step forward. And those moments are like, they're the same for everyone. They're the same for everyone. Have you ever found anything in yourself, and this is kind of more on a motivational thing, but when your mind's basically telling you, you're a pretty put together guy, you seem like you would have confidence, you're highly intelligent. When you get to that point, you're like, dude, this ain't working. What's your mind? What do you like? Do you go for a walk? Do you, do you have a process to get you out of that? What are your thoughts?
It's been a learning curve, because there's ups and downs. There's some days that you feel like you're crushing it, and the next day you come in and it's just like, man, nothing's going right. Like I was riding such a high yesterday. For me, there's a number of things. Being consistent is my biggest thing. I've got to be consistent with, getting up, spending time before the world's awake, whether it be just cleaning out my inbox, reading, writing, etc. That's when I can do that consistently. That's when I'm on pace. I found I have the hardest time keeping perspective when I'm tired. As much as the grind is appealing to everyone, if we follow Gary Vee's advice, the grind can be what we gravitate toward. But if I don't get sleep, it just it just piles on itself like a snowball. And there's a point where it's just like, kind of just sit down and you're like, I have so much to do. I may as well just clock out because there's too much to do. Everything is a priority and I can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Right. So getting sleep and working out, sweating has a way of resetting and doing that consistently as well. Now there's still moments. So sometimes, I literally will take a nap on the office floor if the day is just like completely overwhelming. I'll put on some music in my headphones and just be like, all right, peace out world. I'm going to, take a little break here.
And I think that you brought up a really cool thing about the grind, right? And I think that what it is, and I've learned this over the years, it's like the grind is when you're not really seeing in it, like the grind is like, I know that I have to do this small incremental things and they give value to the big picture. That's the grind, right? It's like, I don't want to do this, but I know if I do it, there's going to be something there. And I think that there's a thin line, because many times we like to tell people, come make $1 million without working a day. Okay.
Yeah. That's after you've worked for many days that day.
Yeah. I mean, you don't get to work
that
day. That day should be the word. Like, you don't get to work that day. But I think that as well is like, what else would you be doing? I mean, I think that there's a part of I'm going to pull out like Joe Rogan for a minute. People, I'm sure, have heard of this guy, but ultimately Joe Rogan's like, guy that gets up and he gets after it. At the end of the day, you feel it. And I think that that's it. Like, and finding, even as I grow and you grow, it's like really finding that, what is the true north, and then being able to kind of go, my grind's worth it,
Yeah, I think it is a thin line too, because you can grind and you can stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning thinking that you have a lot to do, and you just end up staring at your computer because you're just dead tired, right? So it becomes a balance of understanding, okay, I'm just not at my optimal point. Let's clock it in. Let's get some sleep. Let's reset. Because sleep, I mean, I regularly get like 5.5 to 6 hours. If I get less than that consistently or at odd hours, I've got to reset. I've got to take a weekend and just reset. Otherwise, the grind is literally just coming in and hating my life and staring at my computer, and the world's falling around me.
That's an interesting thing. And you're talking about sleep, and there's a lot that goes on with people that are scientifically saying, look, if you don't get enough sleep, you're not going out. And Elon Musk has even been on, and he said, how much do you sleep? He goes, I get 8 hours of sleep. And they're like, how the heck do you get 8 hours of sleep and get that much done? And he said, because I get 8 hours of sleep, right? So there's a gentleman, you ever heard of Bulletproof Coffee?
I have, yeah.
Steve Asprey. He was on, and I guess that there's a deep down study. I don't have all of the data on it. I didn't read it. I saw it. But ultimately what the headline said was that we only need 6 hours, and they keep scientifically coming down to 6 hours. And I think that when you look at those, it's the same thing as our brain doesn't want to believe it. For many years, we believed in the 4 food groups, like the way we
whatever we were told, right?
Yeah, right. As whatever. And then they find out, like, eat all this kale and you're gonna do much better. And then they find out, wait a minute, not everybody's good for kale, so there's those things. And I think that it's kind of the same process that we're in,
Yeah, Jason, there's an interesting thing that I saw. I think it was in someone's Facebook post, but I resonated with it. It was like, they were talking about how the body needs a certain amount of sleep and the mind needs a certain amount of sleep, right? So if you hate your job, or you hate who you're working with, or you hate, everything about your life, you're going to want to sleep forever because you want to avoid that. But your body might only need 4 or 5 hours to reset. But your emotional state, your physiological state just needs to sleep, and it's because it's exhausting, right? Like when I'm on task and I know exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow, and it's like, I know that what I'm doing tomorrow is going to move the needle, I'll get up at 2 a.m. because I'm fired up. I'm ready. My body's good. And my mind's like, let's go. Right. So there's that balance too. Like if you hate what you're doing, it's going to be exhausting, and it's going to be a bad kind of grind.
So let's kind of shift a little bit and talk about kind of some technical stuff. There's on here, it's about, right now we're talking about customer getting, right? So when we talk about customer getting, we always obviously, often it depends on where it is, but if you're selling something, there's a lot of organic opportunities that I always talk about that gets you there. And then there comes a hump over that, that you handle. It sounds that you sell SEO to people as well as part of your program. I did a lot of SEO. But mine was under Oakley sunglasses. So that's probably my pride and joy. I was number 2 under Oakley sunglasses for
that's
a
awesome.
long time, and sold a lot of those.
Yeah.
But, so I understand a lot of that, and SEO has changed a lot. So if we talk about a little bit of SEO, what are some fundamentals maybe that people should be thinking about?
Yeah. So I deal in because you're in more in the e-com space, right?
I'm not in the e-com space. I'm in the coaches and expert space.
Sure. But when you were doing SEO, right?
Yeah, I was in the e-com for 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So the SEO that we're working with is more local SEO.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, we're working with a deck builder or a roofer, right? So it's very focused on, okay, how can we absolutely dominate, the search results when someone's looking for a junk removal company or a roofer, right? So, I mean, from an SEO perspective, I've kind of termed this coin Wadowdy. It's what you do and where you do it. It's the acronym that comes with that, right? And you've got to tell Google what you do and where you do it, right? Because Google, when someone's searching for, let's say a junk removal company or a roofer in their area, Google has to sort through the millions and billions. I don't even know how many websites are out there, right? And sort out, okay, this is the one that's applicable to, Joe the homeowner's over here looking for a junk removal company. How do we match them up, right? So first things first, you've got to tell Google what you do and where you do it. And then there's, a bunch of ways you can do that on your site. But tell Google, answer the questions that people are asking. There's a number of ways Google will even give those to you in the little pop-up like question and answer things, right? But answer those questions, get on YouTube, do some short videos on there. It's the second largest search engine. It's owned by Google as well. Little things that people don't think about can make a big difference and can really increase the domination of the brand as well as bring in more leads.
I think one thing that people would be surprised about is how video ranking can be easier than you trying to rank your site. And I think that
and faster.
Because you really can break through if you have some titles that resonate through that, and because those two are connected, they like to play ball, right? When you're doing this, what are some blowbacks from clients as you go out there and get them? What are some things still in this day and age that you think are holding people back? People are going to be in the metaverse by the time they start collecting email addresses at their business.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not kidding.
Isn't that a graphic example of where we are today? Yeah.
I really do think that there's going to be people literally in the metaverse, and people are over here trying to say, still embarrassed to ask for an email address, right?
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. Like automating things, collecting email, asking for reviews. Nobody asks for reviews. Like, you're proud of your work. You tell me this all the time. You're the best in the area, et cetera, but you don't ask for reviews. And you're scared to take video. Like, come on, you're going out and doing sales calls. You're talking to these people face to face. They see you, but you're scared to put yourself on video because we have this. And I get it, right? Like, when
you're not afraid for them to see you. You're afraid to see yourself.
Yeah, exactly. When I first started doing podcasting, I would never watch mine back. That's I built the confidence over time, but it's weird seeing yourself and hearing yourself, right? And being like, oh, that's what they look like. From our perspective, it sounds like we're incredible, right? But being able to record yourself and put yourself out there is something people don't like to do. And the people that do, they have an edge.
They really do have an edge.
Yeah.
They really do. And bridging that gap, the reason why they have an edge is because, actually, this was a conversation I just had with, I have a mentor that's walking me through some stuff, some new stages and stuff. And he's like, and I'm going to say this in what he said to me. And if you resonate too, he said, you have this brand moved. He's like, but you are enough as well. And meaning that in our society, brands are powerful on certain scale.
Sure.
As people are building businesses, you are the value. And I think that just reiterating that we are the product now.
Yeah. And that's what it's about is building the company brand as well as the personal brand, because people resonate with people.
Yeah, they do. As you go through that, you're obviously dealing with an industry that really has that mentality, right? Why can't I just get my orders put into the same box and, it has like 3 sheets of paper, the carbon copies, and can I pull these out and throw them in? And, when people work a certain way, it's hard to get them to think another way. I think that the only way it has to, at this point, that people want to do digital, they have to make the decision as a company to make the shifts, or even as an individual, because there's a shift that I've seen, and that is, and I don't know if you've noticed this, because you've done enough digital, you've probably noticed this, is that it's kind of reversing where when you would go and do, especially in digital, if you were to go and do somebody's roof, they might yell and scream at you to get it fixed. You'd be like, okay, I'll stay there. You can yell at me and berate me. But in digital, it's the person that's really helping you really does have the answer. And so if you're a jerk going the other way, like you're stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You're stuck, and depending on which side that you're on, hopefully, obviously you're if you're the seller or so, but the buyer, I find that unless they've gone through those barriers, you can't teach them Control C.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes it takes being like, hey, you got to talk to this person that we've helped, and talk to them. It's like, we can only help you up to a certain point. You have to embrace the idea of what we're doing. Pen and paper has gotten you to where you're going, but you want to go further and faster. If you don't want to go further and faster, then pen and paper is going to work for a bit. And then, people just aren't going to relate to you because they're expecting the other communication, because we're training them to do that, consumers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Where would you say in your business right now is your superpower? Meaning that, is it schedule, getting the appointments to come through? Is it closing them? Where do you find yourself? If I say it kind of like this, it's like, if it's a line and you're like, okay, this part I'm not good, but this is like this is where, is it onboarding? I get my clients to feel really well. What part of your business do you see is like, okay, this is where I shine, and then the other parts are because I'm flawed?
Yeah. So the process side, funny enough, you were talking about the engineer side of it. The process side is actually where I've struggled the most. I'm not a process driven person. And so, we've recently, brought on a partnership with an agency in Australia, actually, funny enough, who is very, very process driven. So they're building out our processes based on, what we do, right? So we're helping them with the SOPs and all
world,
of that.
huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, bringing on a CRM that just gives people a way better client experience. So where we shine and where I've shined the most is, if you're a client, Jason, I'm going to have a personal relationship with you. So they're buying the person. And that's where people have previously. And we've lost a few because, either the personal relationship wasn't strong enough, or we weren't, giving them a great client experience. So we've learned from all of those. But that would be a strong suit. And then building our tool belt out to get good long-term results with SEO, but also, the Google ads gets us some good short-term results too, to kind of help build up, and then they, kind of fade out, or we keep both going. But it's, that ability to serve them where they are, based on whatever tool in the tool belt that we have, but have that personal connection with them is huge.
And that, a lot of that has to do with also, is there's such I was thinking about this earlier today. We as a society need to accept the way that speed is moving, and that your expertise may only last a certain amount of time. Yeah. And I think that that's been, I know I've struggled with that due to the fact that you're always trying to lay a solid foundation, and then you're like, nothing's going to change. But I think that what people need to realize is that, we had a client a while back, a long time ago, working on a different project. And he's like, I just want to know exactly what software, what do I need to use is this, what I need to use is that, so I can just run my business. And I think that one of the things people are trying to associate that with is, can I just buy the building and then I can come in and out of it? And what it is your building is actually a living and breathing thing that's getting a new skin on it as we actually move this thing through. How have you found yourself dealing with that evolution? Because I know, I can tell you, because I owned an SEO company years ago as well. And there was nothing like getting home and going, I just put all that work in, and now I'm owned by Google.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, the processes that we do for sure change. So it's always, having to level up, surround ourselves with other agencies who are doing the same sort of thing that we're doing. And then, outside of, how we're actually delivering, the face, the inner moving gears of our company are changing all the time. New people bringing new people on, bringing new processes on, kind of relieving myself of some of the duties so I can do more of the things that I'm good at, like hopping on this podcast, like talking long-term vision, like a year from now, we're going to have a book out, like stuff like that. Right. So being able to step back and have the systems in place so I can, we're pregnant with our third. I want to take more than a day off because our last one, I took a day off. that's not very good for the family unit. So having systems in place so I can do the things that I need to do for the future rather than just putting out fires. So that's a constantly evolving thing and always trying to make that better.
I think that's some really good knowledge. I mean, I think that this is a common thing. I think that a lot of people, just being real with everything, the systems don't stay. I mean, if you look at the trajectory of our businesses, they're surrounded by Google, they're surrounded by Amazon, you're surrounded by Facebook. Now you got, and what has happened over the years, they've evolved, like they just keep growing, they evolve, which ultimately gives us the inability to stay stagnant, right? I mean, you can stay for a while, but you're pretty much going to be stagnant. In the world of, do you guys do web dev too?
We do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're basically taking from ground up, or you're taking the existing.
Typically, if a client needs SEO work, we're saying, for us to do it, we've got to set the foundation, right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of comes part and parcel. If they've got a bunch of content already built out that we can rework, it becomes an easier process. But yeah, if we're going to work with a client with the whole package, it's all right. We've got to build things from the ground up so that we know that our processes work. If we're working with a broken system, we're going to find out 2 months from now that, oh, that's why it's not working. So we don't want you to go through that.
I think that it's a really good point. How's the entrepreneur affected you in the last couple of years? We were running the businesses out of looking in the background of what our lives are like now. I can tell you either you really like going out, or you're a bull rider, or there's something up there with a bunch of hats that are pulled this way, or you like something, so we get the opportunity to kind of look in people's lives, and we have certain things. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
How have you found this transition is kind of towards digital, and really the environment of not seeing a lot of people?
It has exploded my business. So it's funny. I was just talking with someone about that today. Like in 2020, I was like, okay, this is my networking year. I'm going to get out. I was going to do a lunch with Lewis, and I was going to meet with local entrepreneurs here and take them out for lunch, right? Pay for their lunch and just tap into their minds. And like a week after I decided that, everything shut down, right? Mm-hmm. So now, I mean, if I carried on with that path, you and I wouldn't have connected. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have connected with a ton of people that I did last year. I mean, my Facebook friends went from like 700 to, I think I'm at like 32 or something now, 3,200. And people that have impacted my life hugely. I've learned a lot from them on my podcast. But yeah, I mean, it's done well for me in the sense that it's actually more time effective to meet with someone in California for an hour than to travel, for sure, 20 minutes out for coffee for someone here. Right. So, being more effective. And then, yeah, the hats there, actually, I did a thing last year where I got a bunch of contractors to send me hats, clients and stuff. I was like, hey, let's do the hat wall. And then in my live videos, I would wear their hats and shout them out and stuff.
I dig it, man. I dig it. That's really cool. How is this? How is your experience with entrepreneurship and having a family? I think that's a really good conversation as well. We don't need to go too deep into it, but it's an interesting world, and how has that shifted for you? Because I'm sure other people could resonate with that too. It's tricky.
It's a tricky balance. I have when I first started, it was like, okay, it's all grind, and there were times where as I mentioned, it would be staying up till 2 a.m. slogging through and not really being effective, right? And then that would carry over the next day. I was tired, and I can't be my best self in business or at home if I'm tired. It's just, for whatever reason, I operate better when I have sleep for some odd reason. But it's tricky. It's tricky finding that balance. My wife and I have been, finding that balance. So I, throughout the day, I'll pop up if she's putting one of the kids down for a nap. I'll take the other kid, and so we have that scheduled in. I started this business because I wanted more time for the family. So I had to get clear on the fact that running myself ragged and not spending any time with the family wasn't really what I needed. And it wasn't going to happen. Like, it wasn't going to get any better instantly or some far out time in the future. So we just said, okay, we're going to block off times. There's times that are for Alyssa. There's times that are for the kids. Like when I go up, as soon as we're done here, I'm on dad duty. And so that's the time for the kids. The phone stays down here. So there's been some processes in place that we've had to put in place. And for me, I have a hard time turning off because especially when things get stressful, it's like, okay, I've got to be even more on, I'll pull my phone out when I'm with the kids, to the point where our oldest will say, hey, daddy, put the phone away. Like he doesn't like it, right? Because I'm not there present with them. So it's probably been one of the most challenging parts of it, but the most personal growth has come out of it.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible. So you would say that the entrepreneur journey it's not for everyone, but it's for the people that say, look, it's definitely, there's a lot of mind tricks. There's a lot
We
of
trick ourselves with a lot of mind things too.
What was that?
We trick ourselves a lot. There's mind tricks. Absolutely. I mean, someone said that it's a paid personal development course. And if you don't develop personally, you're going to go down with the payment.
I think that goes along with, at the end of the day, what you're noticing a lot of, and I've had this discussion before, and that is that, for many years in the West, if we talked about meditation or the calming or anything like that, you might as well be, a witch,
a loony. Yeah, exactly.
It would be weird. And what we're seeing is a lot of that Eastern philosophy move into the West, probably because of the internet. We're seeing that other people are adjusting to things, but I think it's just so important just to recognize those things and saying, look, we're changing, right? We're changing, and to be able to grow as a business that, because the difficult, I think that the mentality of kind of using meditation and like using these calming things is due to the fact that we're changing so much that we can't find our legs. I used to always say that. It's like, I can't just find my ground because I'm always having to shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think anybody that's being an entrepreneur has to accept that when they get with somebody to learn something, they're going to have to parlay that. It's not going to be the thing. Does that sound right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think there's that, I like the legs, find your legs, find your grounding. We think that there's so much, it's been elevated to such a position of, okay, that's what I've got to do, of the go, 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 go. Otherwise I'm wasting time, I'm wasting effort. I'm doing this. And so we don't pause. And in a sense, I think we numb ourselves out by always working. Like when I first had to sit down and start, like when I, after our daughter was born and I talked about taking a day off for her birth, I went through some tough stuff. I had to personally develop. I brought a coach on for my mind, my mindset, working through a lot of personal stuff, and sitting quietly in the morning without like reaching over and grabbing my phone feels weird. It feels weird if you're not used to it. Like my mind was comforted by the chaos because I didn't have to think about the things that really mattered. Right. And so we run from that. We run from the responsibility of having to face the things that are really happening in our mind by just running from thing to thing.
Mm-hmm. Running from thing to thing, getting away from what the real root cause is.
Yeah.
Guilty.
I mean, it's still a work in progress, right? I mean, that's where addictions come out. That's one way that addictions, one thing that they stem from. For me, social media was a massive addiction, just scrolling, because I was overwhelmed with what was going on in my business. And funny enough, I thought, I did use Facebook for business. And so it felt like I was doing work, but really I was just numbing out. Right.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of that. And I think that, as a collective, I think that we all are kind of recognizing that as well. Yeah. And I think that that's why it's important to kind of be around other entrepreneurs and have these conversations and have these kind of podcasts. Sometimes they go in different directions. I try to open them up and kind of be like, this could go technical or so, but I think that sometimes they flow and say, wait a minute here. And I think that in this conversation, the way that it kind of laid out, it wasn't intentional, is that you're a pretty cool guy who has a lot of different skill sets that you can play off of. And even from the background, I kind of anchored it in that area, but I think it's awesome how you shifted away from what you were gonna be to what you are today. And I think that's the story that people really need to hear, like, okay, wait a minute. I was this person and now I'm this person. And that's the transition, but there was a risk there. You took that risk,
And it's ever evolving. It's ever evolving, Jason. It's because you can get to a point and it's like, okay, sweet, I'm firing all cylinders, but then you don't keep planting those seeds. And then eventually the gas runs out and you're back to where you started. So it's a tricky balance. You've got to invest in yourself. You got to invest in moving forward and learning to overcome the next thing, right? Because as you level up, it's just a bigger demon waiting around the corner.
And I talk about a lot. It's like, where's the energy? And I'm pretty energy. Like, I don't know. I just have a way of just being able to kind of connect in that way. So I have to be very careful. And kind of be aware of what it's like in that energy. And I think that, I just think everybody's recognizing that more and more, especially as people are out there trying things, right? I mean, there's a lot of people out here working and trying to make it work. And once they do, they get this success story like yours. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. What would, how could people contact you? What's the best ways to contact you? And then how can you service them? Because you seem like a great guy. So if they have a need.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah. So, I mean, bluecrocus.ca is our brand website.
I'm going to go ahead and do this for you real quick. BLUCROCUS Solutions, right? BRUCROCUS.
That's right. Yeah. So that's our website, .ca, not .com. And then I'm Lewis Vandervalk on Facebook. I'm probably the most active on Facebook as a social media channel. Instagram I'm working on getting that up. You can find me on LinkedIn as well under Lewis Vandervalk. And I just bought a domain, lewisvandervalk.com. So I'm basically going to have everything I'm involved in, the podcast and whatnot. So you can kind of connect with me on a more personal brand side of things. But yeah, that's how you reach out. Shoot me a message, call me, email me. All that info is out there. You can reach out if you need help. And if you know someone that needs help, we have referral fees as well.
Amazing, man. Incredible guest. I appreciate it, brother. Thanks a lot, man.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Jason.
If you like this episode, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just like Nike is to athletes, Moved is to entrepreneurs.